What if the part of you keep calling self-sabotage is actually trying to protect you? The part that procrastinates, the part that shuts down, the part that overthinks, the part that avoids the conversation, the part that gets close to what you want, but then all of a sudden pulls back. Most people try to fight that part. They shame it. They push harder. They call themselves lazy, inconsistent, undisciplined, or even broken. But what if that part is not trying to ruin your life? Instead, what if it is trying to prevent that kind of pain it remembers all too well? Hey there, Evolver. If you have found this channel, you're probably someone who thinks deeply about life, growth, and the human mind. My name is Amelia, and this is a channel where we explore the psychology, neuroscience, and lived experience of what it actually means to evolve as a human being. In my work with individuals, couples, and leaders, this is one of the most important distinctions I help people understand. Because when someone says, I keep self-sabotaging, I don't know what to do, what they usually mean is, I know what I want, I know what I should do, and somehow I keep getting in my own way. But when we slow that down, the behavior is rarely random. Clinically, rationally, and from a nervous system perspective, behavior is rarely just behavior. It usually has a protective function at its core. And there's often a part of every single person that I've worked with that learned in some way, shape, or form, if I move forward, something bad might happen. If I become visible, I might be judged. If I succeed, expectations might increase. If I get close, I might get hurt. If I tell the truth, I might lose connection. And if I change, I might not belong anymore. So what looks like self-sabotage from the outside may actually be protection from the inside. In the last video, we talked about parts mapping. The idea that most of us don't have one clean, consistent sense of self all the time. And as a matter of fact, we are likely being driven every single day by our parts. We have parts that want to grow. We have a part that wants to hide. We have a part that wants connection at all times. A part that fears that same rejection. A part of us that wants to move forward in our dreams and goals. And a part of us that says, absolutely not. That's not safe. And especially not in that way. This episode is about that part. The part that says, absolutely not. That is not safe. The part that blocks that next step for you as you're going about your evolved journey. Not because this part is bad, and I want to remind us all that there are literally no bad parts. So no, we are not shaming in this video, but it is the part that is scared. Because it's not bad. It is simply just scared, and we need to make sure that we understand that at a deeper level if we want to stop that self-sabotage and kind of navigate what ultimately self-protection is happening here. So when we look at essentially what the narratives are here, if you are feeling like you have experienced self-sabotage, what self-sabotage actually says is that there's something wrong with me. But on the other hand, self-protection itself asks, what is this part afraid would happen if I actually changed? And when we're moving forward, change is happening. So that question changes the entire conversation, not only in our head and in our monologues, but also through our nervous system. Because now we're not actually fighting ourselves or kind of self-shaming ourselves with that defective or pathologizing narrative. We're actually studying our protective systems. And that's where I think it's so cool to understand how procrastination works. And in order to do so, let's actually look at procrastination at its finest. When someone says, I keep procrastinating. I know I need to do the thing. Amelia, trust me, I just won't do it. I'm not going to get it done. Well, yes, sometimes procrastination itself is logical, is logistical. And honestly, as someone who studies flow research, I understand that when you put yourself logistically in a shortened amount of time, your nervous system, your endocrine system, your hormones that help you focus in and get that thing done, yeah, it does. It changes things for sure. But what if I told you maybe that task that you have is a little too vague, and maybe the next step for you is in fact unclear? Maybe there are just way too many open loops, or in my words, what I refer to as open tabs, right? Imagine your computer has 1,000 tabs open. Your computer's going to be a lot slower. What do you think happens to your nervous system when you have open loops and there's not certainty as to the next task, the next milestone, the next step, and all of that is unclear? Well, we might be logistically telling ourselves this story or logically rationalizing our procrastination. Often with high functioning people, procrastination is not a time management problem. Yes, I am here to say the thing. I know it sucks, and it's really important to understand that at the core of it, it is an emotional safety problem. Now, you might be like, Amelia, what the heck are you talking about? Emotional safety, procrastination? Like, how the heck do those two go hand in hand? And how are you saying that procrastination is an emotional safety problem in here? Trust me, high functioning folk, hey, Evolver, I see you, and I didn't get it at first either. And this is where it is so powerful to understand ourselves, because finishing the thing that you're doing or that you need to get done might mean it can be judged. Just hang on that for a sec. Whatever you're doing might be judged by who? Maybe your boss, maybe a coworker, maybe someone that you care about. Whatever you're having to publish, that thing that you're publishing means that people can respond. Sending a message or a DM means that the other person can answer you. Or maybe not. Taking the step that you're focused in on means the reality that you're about to step into becomes even more real, as does all of those things that I just mentioned. So what's happening as you're in that limbo state, what we refer to as behaviorally procrastination, what's really happening is a protective part of you is saying, let's wait, give it a sec, pause, time out, don't move forward. Because waiting is helping that long-term goal. Oh, wait, it's not. As a matter of fact, waiting is the opposite of helping that long-term goal, but our parts want to convince us otherwise, right? Wait just until we get that hour before our deadline so that we can jump into this burst. But because waiting protects you from exposure right now, that emotional exposure that is on the other side of you doing things, right? Publishing that article, approving this message, sending that DM. So the question itself around procrastination becomes way less of a, hey, Amelia, how do I force myself to do it? And far more of what feels unsafe about completing this. Now, at first, this question, when I first understood this, it hit me like a pound of bricks, because I didn't realize that it was about emotional safety when my parts started to procrastinate. And as I learned this question of what feels unsafe about completing this, it totally shifted the reframe. Not just from the logistical, but an acknowledgement of what was emotionally happening on the other end. So I want you to try that out. So let's kind of think about this in a different frame. Let's say perhaps relationships. Shout out to my relationship avoiders out there, because this pattern of self-sabotage also shows up in our most important intimate relationships, our most important and close relationships. So what happens there? Well, we have someone that wants love, and someone that wants love wants also closeness. And what they deeply want is emotional intimacy. Alan, my partner, and I just did an event on relationship talks about emotional intimacy. The movie Meet the Fockers was a great example of how someone wanted love, someone wanted closeness, and someone wanted emotional intimacy. If you've seen that film, you know what I'm talking about. But as soon as the relationship actually starts to matter and you have something to lose, something in that person begins to pull back. Raise your hand if you've ever been there. What happens in that moment is that person's getting critical. They might even get distance and they feel all of a sudden unsure, right? Cold feet comes in at these moments. They start looking for reasons why this relationship is not going to work. Now, from the outside looking in, it can look like that person is sabotaging connection, and understandable. I mean, I've seen that too. It does look that way. But if we hang in there for a second, internally, what's happening is a protective part actually might be saying to them, last time closeness mattered, I got hurt. And so distance starts to feel much safer than vulnerability. That's why that film is magnificent, because Jack Byrne's character is so fearful of vulnerability. And what does that do? That impacts the whole family. Now back to this example, control starts to feel safer than openness. Ambivalence starts to feel safer than attachment. And depending on someone, to revealing your life with someone, that does not mean every relationship should continue. It means that we need to know whether the signal is wisdom from our highest self, our true self, or protection. That distinction matters because intuition and fear can feel very similar in our bodies if you have not learned your own system yet. I get this all the time. Amelia, what's the difference between intuition and fear? How do I tune in between that nuance? Well, if you haven't learned your own system yet, I can't just give you those cliff notes because your system is going to be very different than that line in mine. Now let's kind of shift gears a little bit to, let's do the third kind of frame, what I see so often, which is leadership and visibility. Especially with evolvers, they find themselves in a position of leadership, be that given to them or they've had to step into that for circumstances. But I see this with the visibility component all the time. Self-sabotage is like, oh, I'm just about to go for that promotion, or oh, I'm just about to launch that next step in my career, or oh, I'm about to really step into this parent leadership role. But wait a second. I don't know if I can do this, right? The self-doubt starts coming in. And I see this all the time. A leader knows that they're ready for that next chapter, their next level, their next evolved version of themselves and all of the responsibilities that requires. A creator knows that they need to publish and they need to make sure that they get their book out. A business owners know ultimately that they need to speak more directly to their staff. A professional knows they need to own their authority in the field. But then something happens. What do? They over-prepare. They keep refining. They delay. They soften their message. They make themselves more palatable. If you're feeling called out right now, I see you. I've been through this. I know it sucks. And it can even look like perfectionism. But underneath, perfectionism is often a part that is simply just saying in your inner monologue, if this is flawless, maybe I won't be criticized. Maybe I won't be called out. Maybe I won't be humiliated. Maybe I'll actually get that connection that I've always wanted. Or if I stay slightly hidden, a little boxed up, more palatable. Not too much. Maybe I can avoid rejection. Now, it might not be those words in your inner narrative, but it is that sentiment. The problem is that the same strategy that protects you from criticism also protects you from being fully seen. And I'm not just speaking from seeing this in others. I also have struggled with this. Parts of me have really protected me from being seen to the point where I have a name for that part. And literally every time I get on the camera, I have to make sure that that part is seen and heard and understood. It doesn't make any logical sense. But when we start to break it down, we start to understand it a little bit more about ourselves, that we all have a part that prevents us from stepping into that next chapter, that next video, that next whatever it is for us. So again, the deeper question is not why the heck am I like this and hating yourself and having that be the core. The deeper question from my experience and from what I've seen and what I've helped other people ask themselves truly is, what part of me learned that visibility is dangerous? So from a nervous system perspective, this makes sense. Visibility, exposure, potential threat, rejection, criticism. Your system is not primarily designed to help you achieve your goals, right? We're still dealing with nervous systems that develop with some of the most lower parts or brainstem first, not necessarily our prefrontal cortex, making all these logical decisions and saying, hey, we have goals. Let's make sure that we rise to the occasion. Our system is designed to help us simply survive. And over time, unless we're quote unquote forcing those upgrades or unless we're doing that work, our system's locked in that SOP, that standard operating procedure. Make sure you survive. Thriving doesn't even become a part of the conversation. So if your system associates growth or goal achieving or doing something different or standing out from the crowd with risk, it may and most likely is resisting the exact thing your conscious mind wants. So you're going to battle with your internal parts. And that can be incredibly confusing, not to mention frustrating. Because intellectually, as an evolver, you might want that relationship. You might want that opportunity. You might want the visibility. You might want the boundary, the success, the healing, the goals, the this, the that, and everything that comes with that seems good and helpful and constructive, the raise, etc. But physiologically, a part of you is most likely saying, this is too much. Whoa, this is too exposed for me. This is too unfamiliar. This could cost us the exact connection that we want. This could even cost us our own safety. And if you don't understand that, you may misread protection as failure. This is why so much surface level advice and guidance and videos actually fail us, because it treats the behavior on the surface as the problem. Procrastination, avoidance, overthinking, people-pleasing, perfectionism, shutting down. But the behavior is often the visible layer. The deeper layer is that protective logic or unconscious logic, if you can even call that a word. It's that protective system underneath it. And if we don't understand our own protective system, our own protective logic, what happens to us? If we kind of think about this, we end up trying to remove that barrier unconsciously without understanding why the system needed it in the first place. That, my friends, is not transformation. That is suppression. And that is difficult for us to kind of wrap our hearts around when it really matters, when we're under deadline, when there's things that we really need to make sure that we do. So if you notice yourself self-sabotaging, my friends, here is where we need to start. Step 1, we need to stop shaming the behavior long enough to study it. That means when you are procrastinating or you are self-sabotaging or you're delaying sending that DM, instead of saying, why am I like this with so much frustration and anger and resentment and contempt? I want you to ask, what is protecting me from feeling, facing, or risking? Whew. Trust me, if you just try that on your nervous system, that is going to change the game for you. Step number 2, name the feared cost. Well, Amelia, what the heck are you talking about that? I want you to ask yourself, is this part afraid of rejection? Could it be afraid of failure? Could it be fearful of success, being too much, being judged, being seen, being needed, being disappointed, disappointing someone else? I have a client that cannot understand to the depth that she needs to how deeply disappointment impacts her. And when we walked through this with her, it's like, oh my goodness, I understand my nervous system is literally cannot emotionally cope with disappointment. So all those things, what happens? Well, protection, it becomes easier to understand when you can name the threat, just like anything else. If we don't know what it is, our brain is going to avoid it. And so we want to understand what that protection specifically is. And when we name the threat, we are no longer unconsciously avoiding it. And this is where step number 3 comes in. So let's step into that. So I want you to offer this part of you a safer next step. And it's going to look like very different from you than, let's say, your colleague or someone else you know. So that's why it's not just copy and paste to this advice. But truly, the strategy underneath this is offering that next step, not the biggest step. And this is what I see with high achievers. They always want to leap to the highest rung quickly. They're fearful of wasting any more time, and understandable. But I want to have you not take the next step. It seems contrary to what we have been taught the whole time. It's not going to be the perfect step. It's not going to be the highest utility step, the highest efficient step. It's going to be a safer step. So instead of publishing the whole thing, the whole article, the whole book, whatever, maybe it is record the draft. Instead of having the entire hard conversation, maybe it is naming that, hey, babe, something feels off. Instead of change your whole life, maybe it is honor one signal today, one signal that's coming up internally for you. Because protective parts often do not need to be forced, and certainly do not need to be coerced. They need evidence that moving forward will not destroy the safety they need. I'll say that again. They need evidence that moving forward will not destroy safety. And what safety means to you and your nervous system looks very different from the people around you. This is why these 3 steps are so powerful as you really contemplate them and integrate them into your world. And this also matters for our identities. Because if you keep calling yourself, I'm just a self-sabotager, I'm a procrastinator, I'm lazy, I'm avoidant, I'm a dramatic, inconsistent, I'm broken. Those are identities that you're literally injecting back into yourself, which is a code of conduct, a code of behavior that you're forcing yourself to match and step into again and again. So you start building an identity around the symptom. But when you understand your own protective system, your identity shifts. The identity shifts from a lazy person or a self-sabotager to someone who is broken and disorganized. Instead, you are organized around safety, and your identities need to allow that to happen. And if we're organized around safety, then growth is not about attacking yourself, shaming yourself, or making sure that this identity keeps getting reinforced, that you stay in a pattern that doesn't help you. It is about helping your system learn that new forms of safety are possible. So, my friends, evolvers, the next time you notice yourself pulling away from something or someone you say you want, whatever it is, I want you to pause before you attack yourself. And I want you to ask, what part of me is here? What is it trying to protect? What does it need to know before it can let me take the next step? Because the part of you that is blocking change may not be your enemy. And most likely, with all the work that I've done with parts, it is never the enemy. It may just simply be the part of you that has been trying again and again and again in the only way it knew how to keep you safe. Yes, you. You do not become whole, my friends, by fighting the parts of us, the parts of you that learn to protect you, right? Not fun. If we're just fighting our own selves, it's not productive. It's not helpful. What instead we do is we become whole by learning how to lead them. And this is where self-leadership is so powerful. And sometimes that first step is not about pushing harder. It is getting curious, capital C curious, about why that part of you is afraid to move. So, if you could move the needle forward just a little bit, what level of curiosity are you willing to give your part? I invite you into that. I invite you to journal out your answers to these questions. And I invite you to practice these 3 steps to help you stop, slow down, and move forward through that self-sabotaging loop. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you want to actually go a little bit further in the specific practical application in your world, join me and other evolvers at EVE Reflections, where we will dig into this together as a community, where you're not alone and where you are working on this with other evolvers. Click the link in the show notes. You'll get access to that. And I'm excited to continue this work together as we evolve together. Take care, everyone. Until next time, keep evolving.